Hi, everybody. Sorry I couldn't be there. I'm going to do my little project here over the YouTube, and hopefully this will be interesting. So, my high school is located in Montgomery County. We have a very ethnic population here at the school. Obviously, you see there our highest percentage of students are Hispanic. We see 31% farms. About 20% of our students are special ed as well. So all those things provide unique challenges to our school. Some things that we see in my school today, there is a big push by the county to specifically make sure that all students are learning. So we've seen videos and directives from the superintendent. They always show us a video before every year about his directive has kind of been that all means all. So what's kind of happened, I'd say in the last 5 years, is we've seen an increase in the amount of AP enrollment, and we have seen less of the quote unquote on level classes. So we're pushing kids to take honors classes, and we are hoping that they will, rise to the occasion. That's kind of the idea. Another thing that we see is there's an encouragement to plan, which I'll get to later, is kind of a problem as well, believe it or not. And they want us to really do a good job having cohesive grade books, and they want to make sure that people are on the same page as far as what they're teaching, how they're teaching it, and what's the planning with the end in mind kind of things. The best thing I think the school does is it really allows for teachers to be themselves and to meet the students where they are. So what works for me as a teacher might not work for the same teacher in my department or the same course team. We're teaching essentially the same topics, obviously, but whatever we need to do to get there might be a little bit different. One of the requirements is that all the grade books have to be aligned, meaning anything that's formative has to be exactly the same. The assignments have to be the same. The grades have to be the same. Some strengths and weaknesses that I pointed out. I'm going a little bit out of order, but I figured this fit more closely with the first part here is as far as the organization as a whole, the leadership in the building is very visible all day, walking around, being seen by students. I would say less by teachers. I think this year, I think I've seen the principal or assistant principal 2 times total, which for the 3 years I've been here is not unusual. The staff and administration have done a good job praising people for good work. Some things that probably could be improved is really how they address concerns between staff members. We have a lot of infighting, I would say, in my particular department and in other departments, and there's really no directive on how to solve these issues, which, again, when you're dealing with adults, you would hope that they could solve them themselves, but that is not the case. The other thing is that meetings there don't give useful tools to teachers. So we do a lot of stuff with culturally responsive teaching, and we do a lot of stuff with communication circles or community building circles. And I've found that the application of what they're telling us doesn't always apply to the students that they're teaching. So I think sometimes there is a disconnect between the two. Some methods that they assess as far as how do teachers or people talk about either what can be done better or how could a teacher do better. We all set goals during pre-service week with department heads, so we usually meet. It's about a 30-minute meeting where you talk about what they think you should work on, what you think you need to work on, and then kind of at the end of the year they revisit it. They do informals I would say very rarely. We fill out a survey at the end of the year, which apparently, again, not in the meetings, but is used to discuss next year's goals. And the administration has an open door policy. So the principal never closes her door. So she is very available to a student or a staff member when they need to be there. So some things that I just thought of as we were going through the course was I came up with like a couple ideas that are smaller, that hopefully will build up to something big. So my first idea is to involve more teachers in summer planning, to create some kind of culture team that could be a part of the summer planning. I think the biggest issue I see is that teachers oftentimes don't see themselves in the directive of the school. So providing some kind of way that teachers directly can be a part of the planning process so there is no surprises. The other thing I want, and my old school did this, which I really thought was great, um, is anonymous feedback to the team or team members that can be presented to the principal so that the principal can kind of understand maybe that there are some teachers that are upset about X, Y, and Z, but they don't necessarily want to put their name to it. So at least the issues are brought up to the attention of the leaders in the school. A barrier here would just be the apathetic teacher that doesn't want to be a part of anything, which we all know that is very possible. And to address the apathy, I think if we could figure out how to address apathy of teachers, I think we would have figured it out by now. But I think the best way to do it is just try to be as approachable and understanding of where they're coming from as possible. And hopefully they'll be willing to open up to you and talk to you. Second thing is creating that shared vision. So as a part of that culture team, we are creating the vision of the school, whatever the goals we're setting out for that particular year. We want to make sure that the teachers are involved in that planning process. We want to make it known to everyone, and we want it to be as focused on and concise as possible. So nothing too long, and maybe we want to pick a couple keywords that we can really point to that, and we can make it known to not only the staff, the students, but the community about really what the goals are. The other thing is I want to make sure I meet with building leaders weekly and talk about the issues and discuss plans for improvement. Just hoping that this is just a kind of way that to keep my hand on the pulse or finger on the pulse of the school. And this can be used kind of to address short-term issues and how can I help them address an issue if there is an issue that needs to be addressed. As far as what are the behaviors of the leader, I think you want to encourage risk. I think when we've read plenty of stuff about how risk can encourage kids to grow or can encourage leaders to grow as well. We're not going to know until we try anything. So I think the biggest problem sometimes is we run into teachers that don't want to change, and they don't want to change because they don't want to change their lessons or they don't want to change the worksheet. And that's never a good excuse to not take a chance on something. I've discussed being open and honest with everybody. I think that really builds a trust between both adults in the building if you can have that open and honest dialogue both ways. For staff, I said, set priorities for yourself. What's important to the kids? What's important to you, and making sure you're really doing your best at those individual priorities. Creating an inclusive classroom and creating a safe space for students to want to speak up and participate, because obviously when students participate and they're a part of the lessons, that makes it, those make the best lessons. And I want to start creating a better collaborative atmosphere between teachers. Too many negative meetings, too many negatives come out in meetings. So if we can create an atmosphere where we're going to be way more positive and look at the bright side of things instead of the negatives, then hopefully that can create long-term effects. As far as the community, some things that I would want to just institute is some kind of meet and greet. I saw there was a principal that just got chosen this year, and he did a meet and greet with the community. It's a smaller community. I think the problem with Montgomery County and what I like about Frederick County is Frederick County, it seems way more the smaller communities. You seem more connected. I want to try to bring that to whatever school eventually I work at, to bring that community aspect to it so parents can learn about, where they can see grades, where they can get kids help for stuff. If their child has a disability, how can we get more help for them? We want to work closely with middle school and elementary schools, and we want to make sure specifically that we are getting them ready to get here in the future. So that means showing up to middle school events. That means showing your face in middle schools so they can see what you look like. In Montgomery County, it's less about the years you're there. So principals tend to be there for a very long